Hi, my name's Ari Solomon, and I'm giving you a little tour here of my exhibition. I'm in Sydney, Australia, and we're in a space called Articulate Project Space out in the Leichhardt neighborhood on the western side of Sydney. There's a busy road outside, there's a gallery downstairs and one in the back, and there's also artist studios in this building. So my series is called 6 Feet Apart, and I have been documenting these marks on the sidewalks that tell people to stand 6 feet apart, or 2 meters apart, or 1.5 meters is one of the signs that they have here in Australia. So I have on the floor the marks that are an image of 2 feet. On this wall, I have the marks in the shape of an X. And these marks, these artworks, I call artifacts, they were on the floor at my previous exhibition. They were on the sidewalk outside the gallery for a couple months, and they got faded and scratched and torn up, and I have rescued them and preserved them. So they were found, pictures of found objects that were on the ground. They were sort of recreated on the ground as these photos, and now they are saved and framed on the wall, almost like a memento mori, a reminder of what the pandemic was about. This series is all about finding metaphors for understanding the pandemic and how it changed us. In this grouping, I call this the X sampler grid. There's 25 different locations, and they all have this X kind of shape. Most of these are from San Francisco, in my near my house, in my neighborhood, and some are from Japan, because I live in Japan in the summers usually. I was interested in how I was documenting the pandemic when it started, going for walks outside of when I could leave the house. And I found that documenting this one little piece of the pandemic and getting up close and taking pictures when the images were new as well as when they were distressed over time, or some of them are almost completely disappeared, like the mural in the background of those images has a faint remnants of an X shape, and you see just a little strips of tape that are left, and most of the shadow of the adhesive of some duct tape that was on the ground. So I found that there's many, by focusing in on this one symbol, this one piece of the way our lives changed, it became a metaphor for many aspects of what happened in the pandemic. In this one, I've taken the grid, this typology, this scientific method of documenting some phenomenon and looking at how it changes by comparing one to the other. And I've distressed the grid itself, again, for another metaphor for how the pandemic affected us. In this grid, it's all the circle shapes. And again, some of them, like this one, is just the faintest shadow left. And in this final one is the eye shape. I'm calling it an eye like an uppercase I, but just the flat, simple piece of tape, the simplest kind of shape. And again, on the ground, I have the shapes with the 2 feet. I love how they look on the distressed floor here. So this piece I call the bar graph. I was using the grid and I wanted to find other ways of referencing the scientific method of analyzing data, visual ways to display quantitative information. And so this is referencing a bar graph, but every row is a different location, and the size of the row is determined by how many marks were in that one location. So there's not any exact data being represented here, but just the idea of all the statistics we were looking at, whether it's COVID deaths or immunization rates. And I made a kind of, so the title of it is just bar graph, and there's a little legend here that talks about recreates the graphic and shows the location. So the locations are numbered with 4 numbers, and those are just the numbers that the camera gave the images. I'm kind of approaching this with an idea like I'm a scientist from another planet who arrived on Earth or was studying Earth and wanted to understand what all these marks were that appeared all over the planet very quickly. And so again, I'm referencing all these scientific methods of sorting and organizing and analyzing. So this piece is called DNA sequence. And I'm making, again, a visual reference to one of the early methods of DNA sequencing called the Sanger method. And there's many ways to visualize DNA. I think this is one that kind of, once I mention or people read the label, they can understand what I'm referencing here. And again, I have more of the marks on the ground. Some of them are very, very simple. And the final piece in the show is also these X shapes, and I have mounted them onto these wood panels and wrapped them around the corners. And again, there's a grid that's imperfect. Something's missing. There's a little bit of a mystery to it. I love this space here, and I love again, all the distressed textures. This is an older building that used to be a car mechanic shop for many years. And here on the table, I've got catalogs for the festival. So this exhibition is part of the Head On Photo Festival, which has hundreds of different artists all over Sydney for the whole month of November. I have a packet of small stickers, small versions of what I have on the ground. I have a selection of larger ones for sale, and I have my publication, I call it a zine, that is from a year ago, and I did this interview while I had COVID, and that has a different selection of images. There's a price list and a guest book, and that's the show. So it's up for 3 weeks here in November. The November 26th is the last day, and I will be in Sydney for 2 weeks, and I've really enjoyed checking out the rest of the Head On Photo Festival. Thanks for checking out my show.